Imagine that you are standing at the mouth of a cave in Europe more than 30,000 years ago. Outside, a bitter wind sweeps across the steppe. Within, there is only darkness, the scent of damp stone and firelight trembling against the walls. As a torch is raised, an enormous lion appears. Farther on, a bison, wild horses, mammoths, and human figures at once familiar and mysterious. No one now knows what the people of that age called them, what they asked of them, or which stories they told in those deep chambers beneath the earth. Welcome to tonight's journey. We shall return to the Stone Age and pass through sacred caves, graves bright with red ochre, enigmatic human figures, and circles of stone aligned with the winter sun. This is not a tale of gods whose names are clearly known. It is a search for the traces of belief before writing began. Before we set out, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so that you can join us on more unhurried journeys through history, mythology, and the ancient mysteries of humankind. Now let the rhythm of the story draw you away from the present and deep into an older Europe, where human beings were beginning to sense that the world contained something greater than life itself. Let us return to Europe more than 40,000 years ago, when much of the continent lay beneath long winters, cold grasslands, and ranges of snow-covered mountains. Across that immense country, small bands of people moved with the herds, carrying flint, hides, bone, wood, and memories handed from one generation to the next. Their lives depended upon finding food, preserving fire, avoiding predators, and surviving nights when the wind could find every opening in a shelter. A broken spear point, a bundle of damp firewood, or the print of a dangerous animal near the cave mouth could become a matter of life and death. Yet hunger and cold were not their only concerns. Around the hearth, practical knowledge passed continuously from one person to another. Someone knew where reindeer crossed a river in autumn. Someone else remembered a seam of flint exposed beyond a ridge. Children learned the difference between a harmless track and one that required silence. The group survived because observation became memory, and memory became something that could be shared in that setting. An object or a sound could serve as more than decoration. It could hold a lesson, recall an absent person, or make a familiar story present again. At some remote point in the past, hands accustomed to striking stone began to spend long hours on tasks that neither made hunting easier nor shortened the winter. People ground small objects into beads, pierced animal teeth, cut patterns into bone, and shaped creatures from mammoth ivory. They also made instruments capable of filling darkness with sound. In these modest objects, we begin to recognize a profound change in human history. A stone knife demonstrates skill in making tools. A bead tells us something else. It suggests that people had begun to believe an object could possess a meaning beyond its practical use. Such a bead might show which community its wearer belonged to, mark a stage in that person's life, or recall a story understood by everyone in the group. Its significance could also change as it passed between hands. What began as a bright shell gathered beside distant water might become a gift, then an heirloom, and finally part of the clothing in which somebody was buried. A child would not need a written explanation to recognize it. The meaning lived in gestures, in occasions when the object was worn, and in the responses of those who saw it. That meaning did not reside naturally in the stone, shell, or tooth. It existed in the human mind. When many people shared such an invisible meaning, a new world began to take form, a world of symbols, memory, and stories able to outlive any single person. In what is now southern Germany lies a limestone region known as the Swabian Jura. During the Ice Age, cold valleys opened between its slopes. Winds crossed the bare ground, and deep caves offered important shelter. Over tens of thousands of years, soil and stone covered the traces of those who lived there. Though they did not erase them entirely, beneath the sediment remained animal bones, stone tools, charcoal from fires long extinguished, and small objects fashioned with astonishing care. When archaeologists excavated caves such as Hohlefels, Geissenklösterle, and Vogelherde, they found more than the remains of meals and hunts. They uncovered beads, pendants, mammoth ivory figurines, and musical instruments made from bird bones. These discoveries lead us towards a very different part of Ice Age life, one not wholly governed by survival. They also reveal a demanding chain of preparation. Ivory had to be obtained from a mammoth and divided without wasting its useful layers. Bird bone had to be cleaned, cut, and pierced without shattering its thin walls. Even a tiny bead required a hole through which fiber or sinew could pass. The finished object was therefore the visible end of knowledge, patience, and time contributed by people whose daily lives allowed few careless hours. Picture a person sitting beside a cave fire. Before them rests a hard, white, curving piece of ivory. To give it an intended form, the craftsperson must cut, scrape, drill, and polish for many hours. A misplaced stroke may split the material. One movement made with too much force may destroy the work of days. The light is uncertain as well. The flame brightens and weakens, revealing a fine detail and then surrendering it to shadow, in a life where every hour of labor mattered. Devoting so much effort to something with no direct use in hunting is remarkable. Its maker may have been thinking beyond the immediate moment of identity. An old memory, a treasured story, or a power that could not be grasped like stone, meat, or wood. We must nevertheless proceed with care. Not every ornament was sacred. A string of beads may simply have made its wearer beautiful. An engraved sign might have marked ownership or distinguished one community from another. A figurine could have served in storytelling, preserved a memory, or helped an adult explain something to a child. Archaeology lets us see the object, but it cannot restore its maker's explanation. The words, songs, and stories that once surrounded these things vanished long ago. What makes the Swabian Jura extraordinary is not a single discovery, but the presence of many kinds of symbolic object within the same cultural landscape. Ornaments, figurines, and musical instruments existed together. They show that these communities used images, sounds, and signs to connect with one another in ways reaching far beyond the business of the day. One of the most remarkable finds came from Hohlefels, a flute made from the hollow bone of a bird. The light but resilient instrument has 5 finger holes and, when complete and properly played, can produce several different notes. Imagine that sound in an Ice Age cave. Outside, the wind moves through the valley, lifting fine snow from the ground. Inside, flames tremble against the roof. Faces around the hearth emerge and recede with every pulse of light. After a long day, someone raises the bone flute to their lips. Breath passes through the hollow shaft and becomes a thin, clear note. It touches the stone walls, travels into dark passages, and returns, as though another voice hidden within the cave were quietly answering. We do not know what its music resembled. No one can say whether the flute was played for pleasure, to accompany a tale, to gather people together, or to begin a ceremony. Yet music can transform our sense of space and time. The same cave and the same fire may, with the arrival of sound, become a place of assembly. An ordinary evening may become an occasion for remembering the dead, recounting a journey, or passing on stories first told by an earlier generation. The player, too, had to learn. Breath must be controlled. Fingers must cover and uncover the holes in a deliberate order. A melody could therefore be repeated rather than discovered anew each night. If others knew it, they could anticipate its turns, join with voices or rhythm, and recognize the moment it announced. Such repetition is one of the quiet foundations of tradition. Music, leaves no lasting trace like stone or bone. It exists for a moment and disappears. To create it as a shared experience, people must listen together, follow a rhythm together, and turn their attention towards the same thing. In such moments, a community is more than a group of individuals sitting close for warmth. Its members are joined by memory, sound, and a common sense of what matters. This brings us to a larger question. How can we recognize a prehistoric ritual? No single sign provides certainty. Archaeologists look instead for several kinds of evidence occurring together. An object placed in a very difficult location may have had special importance. An action repeated over generations may reveal a tradition. A valuable possession deliberately broken, buried, or abandoned may be something other than ordinary refuse. Even then, interpretation remains provisional. Objects move after deposition. Cave floors are disturbed. An item that seems isolated today may once have belonged to a larger group of perishable things. The discipline lies in holding possibility and restraint together, allowing evidence to suggest a meaningful act without forcing it to describe a ceremony that no living witness can confirm. Nor does ritual require a temple, a priesthood, or a god with a name. It may consist simply of actions performed in an order the community considers important, the same melody at a particular season, the same object passing through many hands, or the same story told before every long departure. By repeating such acts, people turn time itself into meaningful moments. An evening is no longer merely the interval between day and night. It may become the night of a certain story, a remembrance, or a custom learned by adults from their elders and now entrusted to the young. Perhaps the earliest gods had not yet acquired a recognizable form. Perhaps they possessed no names or temples and were not imagined as kings ruling the sky. Before the divine had a face, people may have sensed the sacred in a note echoing through stone, in an object guarded through many seasons, or in the carefully carved body of an animal. If religious thought began here, it did not arrive in a single revelation. It grew across millennia from the capacity to look at an object and perceive more than the object itself. An animal tooth might become a sign of courage. A piece of ivory might preserve the memory of herds passing through the valley. A melody might remind a community of the country in which its ancestors once lived. We cannot know precisely what the people of the Swabian Jura thought when they held these objects. We can see, however, that they inhabited a world dense with meaning, a world in which matter and imagination were not entirely separate. They used sound to fill darkness. They used symbols to connect the living with the memory of the group, and perhaps through forms fashioned from bone, stone, and ivory. They began to approach a realm that ordinary eyes could not see. At the close of this chapter, return with me to a cave in southern Germany. Among earth, ash, and fragments of bone lie numerous broken pieces of ivory. Their original form has been lost. Yet through years of patient work, archaeologists gradually return each fragment to its place. One curve becomes a shoulder, a pointed piece becomes an ear. Faint incisions emerge beneath the lights of the laboratory, from an object shattered for tens of thousands of years. A strange figure slowly appears. The reconstruction is itself a dialogue across time. Conservators compare the grain of each fragment, the angle of breaks, and the continuation of carved lines. Pieces that seemed no more than splinters acquire a place in an intentional design. What the soil preserved separately becomes once more the product of a single imagining mind. Its body resembles that of a human being, but its head belongs to a great cat. This is no animal that prehistoric people could simply have watched upon the steppe. It is a creature born only in imagination, in a mind where the boundary between humanity and the wild had opened. In the next chapter, we shall draw nearer to that figure, the Lion Man, one of the most enigmatic survivors from the spiritual world of Ice Age Europe. in the subdued light of a modern gallery. The Lion Man stands motionless behind glass. It is not monumental like the statues raised for the gods of Egypt or Greece. Yet few visitors can pass without pausing. The upright body has human lines, 2 long legs, arms resting beside the torso. The head, however, belongs to a great cat that once hunted the frozen grasslands of Ice Age Europe. It is not entirely human, but neither is it merely an animal. We call it the Lion Man, though its maker certainly used another name, if it had a name at all. Not a syllable of that community's language survives, and no text can tell us whether people regarded the creature with reverence, pride, fear, or simple curiosity. All that remains is an ivory body that endured tens of thousands of years in darkness. Fragments of the figure were discovered in 1939 in Hohenstein-Stadel Cave, in southern Germany's Lone Valley. Broken into many pieces, they did not at first reveal what they had once formed. Later excavations recovered hundreds more fragments of ivory, some joining the original pieces and allowing conservators to reconstruct a more complete figure. Recent work indicates that it was carved from a mammoth tusk and may have been deliberately placed in the cave during the Aurignacian period. The object we see today is consequently also the result of modern patience. Its present outline did not rise intact from the soil. It emerged slowly as excavators returned to old deposits, and conservators tested one fragment against another. The long interval between discovery and fuller reconstruction is a useful reminder. Archaeology's meanings are seldom revealed all at once. New evidence can alter not only the date or appearance of an artifact, but the very question we ask of it. Try to imagine its creation. On snow-covered ground lies the body of a mammoth. Its tusks are valuable but difficult material. The carver must understand their layered structure, know where a cut is safe and where a crack may begin, and foresee the finished creature before making the first incision. Ivory cannot be corrected as clay can. A cut driven too deep may remove an ear, destroy the line of the nose, or split an entire section from the torso. Working with small, sharp stone tools, the craftsperson probably labored for days, perhaps longer, paring away thin layers, smoothing the surface, and patiently releasing a being concealed within the curving tusk. While others prepared food, repaired hide garments, or examined spear points, this person remained bent over the pale material. Every movement required skill, but also an unusually clear inner image.
That is what makes the Lion Man exceptional.
Its maker did not copy any creature visible in nature. The human body had to be held in memory, combined with the head and upper form of a cave lion, and transformed into a single, coherent being. Studies of archaeological cognition have argued that this intentional joining of the concepts human and animal demonstrates complex abstract thought at a very early stage of Homo sapiens life in Europe. But why a lion? Ice Age Europe was not a gentle country. Mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, bison, wild horses, and reindeer moved across the cold plains. Hyenas, bears, and great cats waited in the valleys, powerful enough to kill prey that human beings could confront only with weapons, fire, and cooperation. The cave lion was among the most formidable hunters of that world, larger than many modern lions. It could move with near silence and wield a strength no human possessed. A band seeing its broad prints in snow did not need to glimpse the animal itself to understand that danger was close. A claw mark, a scent upon the wind, or a sound in the night was enough to sharpen the attention of those guarding the fire. A lion could appear and vanish with terrifying speed. It saw in darkness better than any human, approached without revealing itself, and inhabited a sensory world people could never fully enter. To a Stone Age community, such an animal may have inspired admiration as well as fear. That difference in perception mattered. The animal could hear movement beyond the range of human attention and follow scent through a landscape that seemed empty. It crossed the same valleys as people, but knew them by other signs. To imagine becoming lion-like may therefore have meant more than acquiring great muscles or dangerous teeth. It may have suggested access to another manner of seeing the night. People might dread its teeth and still desire its power. They could avoid its hunting ground while longing to understand how it moved, found prey, and survived the winter by combining human and lion. The carver created a being with the posture of one and the strength of the other. It may represent a transformed person, or a creature belonging completely to neither world. Here, however, caution is essential. The Lion Man is often described as one of the earliest pieces of evidence for religion. Even as an ancient deity, the idea is alluring, but archaeology cannot establish that the figure represented a god. No clearly identified shrine surrounds its find spot, no prayer, recorded ceremony, or myth remains. We do not know whether the whole community saw it, whether it belonged to one person, or whether it was kept in a restricted part of the cave. The title of this chapter must therefore always carry an invisible question mark. The Lion Man may have been divine, but it may also have been many other things. It could have embodied a character in a fireside story, like the fantastic beings of later traditions. A storyteller might have lifted it into the flame, turning the figure in one hand as its shape guided listeners through a journey whose words are lost. The figure's manageable size supports such possibilities without proving them. It was not fixed to a wall. It could be concealed and revealed, passed to another person, or carried between camps. Every change of angle would make the muzzle, shoulders, and incised surface answer the fire differently. An object with no moving parts could nevertheless become animated through voice, gesture, and light. It may have represented a legendary ancestor. A community might have traced its beginning to an animal, a particular landscape, or an extraordinary being from a distant age. Another interpretation connects the figure with people wearing animal hides or masks. Hunters gained practical value from studying and imitating the movements of animals on special occasions. Dress of this kind might also have transformed an ordinary member of the community into something visibly different. Yet no evidence permits us to reconstruct a particular ceremony. To claim that a shaman put on a lion's head, danced in the cave, and prayed for a successful hunt would be to leave archaeology and enter a modern invention. What we can say with greater confidence is that imagination had crossed the boundary between human and animal. Modern thought often places humanity and other creatures in separate categories. But for people who lived every day among tracks, cries, migrations, and animal deaths, the division may have been far less absolute. Their calendar was written partly in animal movement. Returning herds announced a season. An abandoned den revealed another creature's habits. Birds could signal water or changes in weather. Human survival required entering, as far as possible, the intentions of other species. A hunter imagined where an animal would turn before it turned. The intellectual crossing between human and animal was therefore already present in practical life. Even before an artist gave it visible form, animals supplied more than meat. Their bones became tools, sinews became bindings, skins held off the cold, and tusks became works that could pass between generations. An animal thus continued after death in many forms, as food within a human body, a garment upon the shoulders, a point at the end of a weapon, and finally an image within the community's inner life. We should also attend to the Lion Man's stance. It does not crouch like a predator stalking prey. It stands upright and still, apparently looking forward. The elongated body, close-set legs, and large head lend it a difficult, almost commanding dignity. That posture may be why many modern viewers feel they face a powerful presence, but our response need not resemble that of someone 40,000 years ago. What appears divine beneath museum lights may once have been a storytelling object. A figure that seems solemn in a case may have been held, carried, wrapped in hide, or placed beside a hearth. Nor does discovery in a cave automatically turn the cave into a temple. An Ice Age cavern could be shelter, workshop, storeroom, and setting for exceptional activities, at the same time. Even so, the depth of Hohenstein's Stadel, the immense labor invested in the carving, and its form, unknown in nature, make it hard to dismiss the possibility of special meaning. Evidence that the figure may have been intentionally deposited rather than casually discarded deepens the question of its role. Elsewhere in the Swabian Jura, archaeologists have found small carvings of cave lions, mammoths, horses, birds, cattle, and figures combining human and animal traits. UNESCO recognizes these caves as preserving one of the world's earliest known bodies of figurative art, dating roughly from 43,000 to 33,000 years ago. Together, these works suggest repeated choices rather than a single flash of invention. Makers returned to certain species, learned conventions of carving, and adapted the difficult curves of ivory. One figure may have been understood beside another, one story may have borrowed from several animals. The Lion Man's singular appearance exists within that wider habit of observing the living world and giving memory a durable shape. The Lion Man, therefore, did not emerge in an empty cultural landscape. It belonged to a tradition in which animals were observed, remembered, and recreated with extraordinary attention. We must not, however, infer from a handful of objects that all Stone Age Europe worshipped a common lion god. Communities separated by hundreds of kilometers and thousands of years may have used animal images in entirely different ways. There was no single Stone Age religion covering the continent. In one valley, the lion may have signified danger. Elsewhere, it may have evoked strength, the memory of a hunt, or a story belonging to one group alone. The meaning of a species could change with place and time, just as symbols have changed in every society since. Nor must practical and spiritual meanings exclude one another. A creature may be feared in an immediate encounter, admired in a tale, invoked as a comparison for a brave person, and remembered through a carving. Later categories such as art, tool, religion, and play may divide experiences that prehistoric communities held together. The same ivory being could participate in more than one kind of occasion during its long use. The Lion Man's greatest value, then, does not lie in offering a complete answer. It matters because it proves that very early human beings could imagine something never present before their eyes. The Maker did not merely observe the world, the Maker rearranged it. Human posture was joined to leonine power, the familiar to the terrifying, the near and knowable to the unreachable, from the tusk of one enormous creature. The artist created a third being poised between two worlds. Perhaps this is where mythology begins, not necessarily with a named god, but with the question of what might happen if a person possessed the power of a wild animal, not with a religion already governed by laws, but with an image that allowed many minds to remember, retell, and feel something beyond ordinary life. As we leave the Lion Man, we still cannot decide whether it was deity, ancestor, legendary character, or emblem of mysterious transformation. The uncertainty does not diminish it. On the contrary, its silence reveals the depth of the distance between our present and the world that made it. In the last light, the ivory body remains still. The lion's face expresses neither rage nor mercy. It looks out from an age in which humans, animals, and imagined beings may not yet have been separated by firm boundaries. Then the light recedes. Behind the figure waits the darkness of other caves, where hundreds of horses, bison, mammoths, bears, and lions remain upon walls of stone. To understand why animals occupied so large a place in the Stone Age mind, we must go deeper, into chambers natural light has never touched. Behind the Lion Man lies a far greater world, where animals no longer fit into the palm, but range across entire walls of stone. To enter it, we must leave the daylight, pass beneath low cave mouths, and continue into a darkness older than humanity. At first, the fire still catches the familiar contours of the entrance. Underfoot lie broken stone, damp earth, and old fragments of bone farther in. The air grows colder and heavier. The wind outside fades, replaced by footsteps returning from wall to wall, so that the traveller may feel another company advancing quietly behind. The natural light disappears altogether. From that moment, people can depend only upon torches, stone lamps burning animal fat, or embers carried with care. Each step takes them farther from ordinary life and nearer to chambers that perhaps only a few members of the community ever saw. Light itself required planning. A torch had to burn long enough for both the inward and outward journey. A stone lamp needed fuel, a wick, and someone attentive to its flame. To make an image in such a place meant transporting pigment and tools while keeping hands free to climb or steady the body. The darkness was not a passive background. It shaped every decision and made access to the wall a collective achievement. In places such as these, Stone Age people left thousands of images. Among the oldest and best preserved sites is Chauvet-Pont d'Arc Cave in southern France. A rockfall sealed its entrance around 20,000 years ago, and modern people rediscovered it only in 1994 because it remained almost entirely undisturbed. More than 1,000 drawings, animal traces, and human footprints survived in exceptional condition. Many of the images belong to the Aurignacian period, around 30 to 32,000 years ago. Picture someone crossing the floor of Chauvet with a torch. The flame cannot illuminate the whole chamber. It touches one small area of wall and draws a creature out of darkness. First comes a curve like an animal's back. Then a horn appears, as the flame moves sideways. The full weight of a woolly rhinoceros emerges, its head lowered as though preparing to charge. With another step, more creatures arrive. Cave lions gather in groups. Mammoths occupy the natural folds of the rock. Bears, bison, aurochs, and rhinoceroses follow one another over the curving surfaces. Some forms overlap, others turn in the same direction, making a whole wall resemble a herd passing through the dark. The artists understood animal bodies. They knew how to render a shoulder line, a belly, the inclination of a head, and the movement of legs. They combined pigment with incision and used the swelling and recesses of the stone to suggest depth and motion. UNESCO has noted Chauvet's anatomical precision, its union of drawing and engraving, and its sophisticated modeling of form. Many of the species are remarkable precisely because they were not easy to observe. Lions, bears, and rhinoceroses were dangerous. They did not stand still for prolonged study, nor permit an artist to approach and examine every detail. Perhaps the images grew from brief encounters, tracks, carcasses, and memories accumulated across generations. The artist did not need the living animal immediately before them. Its form was already carried within the mind. Why, though, bring these creatures beneath the earth? If people merely wished to decorate their homes, they could have painted near the entrance where daylight reached. If they intended only to teach the young to identify animals, slippery and difficult chambers were hardly convenient classrooms. Not all Stone Age art lies deep underground, but complex groups of images in secluded chambers suggest that some locations were chosen deliberately. Archaeological and paleontological evidence at Chauvet indicates repeated human visits for cultural and possibly ritual purposes, though the exact nature of those activities cannot be fully restored. From Chauvet, our journey turns southwest towards Lascaux. About 17,000 years ago, prehistoric artists transformed its rooms and passages into a vast world of images. Lascaux is now among the most celebrated painted caves of the Vézère Valley, its animals distinguished by keen observation, color, and a compelling impression of movement. In the chamber, commonly known as the Hall of the Bulls, the visitor does not face a modest picture placed at eye level. Aurochs, horses, and deer extend across the stone and surround the space, as though herds were arriving from every direction. Firelight would have made this wholly unlike viewing a modern reproduction. As the flame shifted, legs might disappear while a head and horns became bright. Overlapping animals emerged in succession and vanished again, so that the wall itself seemed to breathe. The artist did not simply apply color to a flat surface. A natural swelling became the shoulder of an aurochs. A curve became the belly of a horse. Cracks joined painted lines, and the animal appeared not merely to rest upon the wall, but to step out from within it. Different techniques strengthened the illusion. Charcoal could make a quick dark contour. Mineral color could fill a body. Scraping might lighten part of the wall. Repeated legs could suggest successive positions in movement. The result was not primitive in the sense of being careless or unobservant. It was the work of people who understood how little information the eye needs before stone becomes muscle, hide, and motion. Perhaps the wall was more than a support for the image. Perhaps its shape, shadow, and uneven skin were part of the meaning. In several caves in northern Spain, modern acoustic studies have found possible associations between the placement of marks and places with particular echoes or resonances. The evidence does not prove that every image was positioned for sound, but it suggests that voices, rhythmic blows, or singing may have altered how certain chambers were experienced. Pause in the darkness and imagine a sound. It may be a short call, or two stones struck together in a slow rhythm. The sound meets the roof, passes through narrow openings, and returns from several directions. One voice becomes the suggestion of many. The body would feel the resonance as well as hear it. A low note might seem to rise through the floor. A sharp beat could return from a passage no torch revealed. In an open landscape, sound helps locate its source. In a cave, echoes loosen that certainty. A voice may seem detached from the speaker, and the chamber may appear to answer. Such effects do not prove a ritual, but they help explain why underground space could acquire unusual emotional power. Before immense animals, amid unstable light and echoes rising from the rock, the cave could feel utterly different from the country outside. Yet the sacred atmosphere a modern visitor imagines is not sufficient evidence to call every cave a temple. Some chambers may have been used ceremonially, while others served several purposes. In one cave system, people might seek shelter, make tools, tell stories, leave signs, and perform uncommon acts. This returns us to the central question: did Stone Age people worship animals? Early students of prehistoric art often explained the paintings as hunting magic. Under this hypothesis, making an animal's image allowed hunters to control it symbolically, summon the herds, or ensure success. The theory was influential because it offered one clear purpose for many pictures. Yet a single explanation becomes fragile when confronted with the full range of species, signs, locations, and dates. Some images bear marks that may have been added later. Others remain visually untouched. Some occupy grand chambers, while others are hidden in narrow recesses. Whatever people were doing, it probably did not remain identical across the continent or through 20,000 years. The idea seems plausible because hunting communities depended profoundly upon animals, yet it does not explain all the evidence. Dangerous species are frequently prominent, while the animals painted do not always correspond to those most often eaten. Cave art is unlikely to be a simple inventory of prey. Another hypothesis holds that images conveyed knowledge. An adult might point to horns, backs, or legs while explaining how to recognize a species, anticipate its behavior, or recount a hunt. That may well have happened, but we cannot declare the cave's ordinary schools. Inaccessible locations and complex arrangements suggest that at least some activity reached beyond practical instruction. Some scholars connect caves with altered states of consciousness, transformation, or people acting as mediators with an unseen realm. In this reading, painted animals are not ordinary beasts but spirits, ancestors, companions, or beings encountered in ritual experience. The proposal remains controversial. Comparison with more recent hunter-gatherer societies may offer suggestive parallels, but cannot prove that Stone Age Europeans held identical beliefs across tens of thousands of years. Resemblance must be handled carefully. It is also possible that the paintings belong to long narratives whose words have gone. Each animal may have been a character. The way creatures face, confront, or overlap one another might once have recalled a sequence of events known by heart. If so, the wall preserves only half the story. The rest lived in the storyteller's voice and gestures, in music and shared memory. When the last person who knew the tale died, its exact meaning died as well, leaving the animals motionless in stone. At Altamira and 17 other caves in northern Spain, art was made over an immense span from roughly 35,000 to 11,000 years ago. Painting, engraving, and relief were therefore not a brief experiment, but traditions maintained and changed through many generations. Imagine different people entering the same cave while separated by centuries or millennia. One leaves the first animal. Generations later, someone adds a line nearby. Perhaps the later artist understands the older image. Perhaps its meaning has changed, yet the place remains memorable and is used again. The later visitor also had to decide whether to preserve, overlap, or avoid what was already there. Each choice created a relationship with the past. To paint beside an old animal might acknowledge it. To cover part of it might renew or transform the image, because many surfaces record more than one episode. A cave wall can resemble a conversation whose speakers lived centuries apart.
In this way, a cave becomes a vessel for time.
Its marks connect people not only with animals but with those who entered before them. A visitor might see a handprint, engraving, or color placed there by someone in a past already remote. But caves were not the only home of Stone Age art. In Portugal's Coa Valley and at Ciega Verde in Spain, thousands of animals were engraved on open-air rock faces beside rivers. Their themes and arrangements often resemble underground art, showing that animal imagery was not confined to the underworld. Outdoors, the experience would have been different. Sunlight changed with weather and hour rather than with a moving torch. Travelers could meet the engravings beside familiar routes, and river water placed them within a living landscape. Some lines may have grown clearer in angled light or when pigment entered the cuts. Their survival also hints at how much open-air art elsewhere was erased by frost, erosion, and vegetation. That discovery protects us from an easy conclusion. Not every animal belonged to a secret cave rite. Some images stood in sunlight, near roots, water, or places of frequent passage. Art's meaning could vary with site, period, and community. Did Stone Age people worship animals? The honest answer is that we cannot be certain. There is no evidence of one religion in which bison, lions, horses, or mammoths were universally adored as named gods. Nor should we assume that every European community understood animals in the same way. What survives, nevertheless, places animals at the heart of symbolic life. Animals were food, material, rivals, and danger. They possessed abilities people lacked. They crossed immense distances, inhabited darkness, endured winter, and sensed changes in the land in ways human observers could only partly comprehend. Prehistoric people may not have knelt before animal images as later worshippers knelt before divine statues. Their respect may have taken another form, preserving the creature's shape, telling its story, carrying part of its body, or entering darkness to recreate it in stone. Animals may not have been gods in our familiar sense, but they belong to a world larger than the hunt. As the last torch leaves the wall, horses, bison, lions, and mammoths return to darkness. They have not disappeared. They await another flame, another footstep, another generation. Human bodies are rare and often hard to recognize upon these walls. Outside the caves, however, Stone Age people began to contemplate their own bodies through objects that could be held in the hand. And there, a new mystery awaits us. Were the female figures shaped from stone, bone, and ivory portraits of human beings, emblems of life, or images of a mother goddess whose name is forever lost? Leaving the animal-covered cave walls, we enter a smaller and quieter world, no less mysterious. Images no longer spread across stone. They are gathered into objects scarcely taller than a hand, small enough to carry on a journey, placed beside the fire, or conceal within a fold of hide. These are the female figures commonly known as Stone Age Venuses. They have been found across a vast territory, from Western and Central Europe into regions far to the east. Their makers used stone, bone, mammoth ivory, and sometimes fired clay. Some are reduced to simple silhouettes, others clearly show breasts, abdomen, hips, limbs, ornaments, or details that may represent hair and clothing. Even the phrase female figure conceals variety. Some objects are complete bodies, others preserve only a torso or head. A few are highly finished, while others use a handful of incisions to make a human form recognizable. Scale, material, and portability differ. The category is a modern way of bringing discoveries together, not evidence that their makers considered every example part of one tradition. From the outset, however, we must remember that Stone Age people never called them Venus. The name arose long after the figures were made. In 1864, one prehistoric female image was christened the immodest Venus, a wry comparison with the classical goddess. The term then spread to many Paleolithic female figures. Although they predate Roman religion by tens of thousands of years and have never been shown to portray a single deity, the label quietly places an answer in the modern mind before the question has been asked. On hearing Venus, we think of beauty, love, and fertility, when breasts, belly, and hips are emphasized. It is tempting to see a mother goddess invoked for human births and abundant herds. That reading may contain some truth, but it may also make us see these silent, diverse objects through the assumptions of our own age. Return to whole fells in southern Germany, which we visited at the beginning of our journey, among objects of ivory and animal bone. Archaeologists found a small female figure made about 40,000 years ago. Among the earliest known representations of the human body, carved from mammoth ivory. It was discovered in several pieces in 2008. The female form is unmistakable, but where the head might be is a small loop through which a cord could pass. The figure may therefore have been worn as a pendant, although researchers have also considered whether it once possessed a head made of perishable material or was altered after damage.
Imagine the person who held it.
Parts of the ivory were polished smooth, incised lines caught the fire, now bright and now lost in shadow. If suspended from the neck, the object may have touched skin, moved with each step, and crossed Ice Age valleys with its owner. Something worn close to the body can carry many meanings: identity, protection, remembrance, beauty, membership, or ritual importance. Yet the possibility that it was worn cannot tell us whether its owner saw a goddess, an ancestor, or something else entirely. Wear can sometimes reveal that an object was handled, suspended, or rubbed, but it cannot identify the emotion behind the action. The same pendant could comfort one owner, proclaim belonging to another, and later enter the ground as an offering or discarded possession. A long object history may include several meanings rather than one permanent definition. The form itself has provoked debate. Features connected with sex and reproduction are prominent. While the face is absent, interpretations range from fertility deity to erotic symbol, but shape alone cannot prove any of them. Roughly 10,000 years later, another female figure was made near Willendorf on the Danube. Today it is among the most famous works of prehistoric art. The Venus of Willendorf is about 11 centimeters high and nearly 29,500 years old. Found in Austria in 1908, it was carved from limestone and once bore red pigment. Under modern light, its head inclines slightly. There is no clear face, but regular coils cover the head. They may be hair, a cap, a net, or woven clothing whose true significance is gone. Small arms rest above the breasts, the abdomen, hips, and thighs are full. The feet are scarcely represented, making the object difficult to stand without support, a hand or a surface upon which to lie. These qualities encourage generations of viewers to call it a fertility symbol. A full body may suggest pregnancy, childbirth, and the nourishment of infants in a world of low life expectancy, injury, illness, and uncertain food. The birth of a healthy child was surely of great importance, yet a long distance separates that observation from the claim that the figure was a fertility goddess. Not every Venus appears pregnant, nor does every figure resemble Willendorf. Some are slender or tall, some have faces, some wear apparent jewelry or clothing, others possess features difficult to classify as clearly male or female. Vienna's Natural History Museum emphasizes that Paleolithic female figures share certain traits while differing substantially between regions and styles. Such diversity weakens the idea of a single mother-goddess religion extending across Europe. Communities separated by hundreds or thousands of kilometers may never have met. The objects themselves were made many generations apart, even if certain forms traveled widely. Their meanings need not have remained the same. Similar things can be used differently. In one community, a figurine may have been a personal possession elsewhere. A comparable form could help tell a story, mark adulthood, or represent a particular person. Meaning may change over millennia, while an outward convention continues to be copied. We see comparable instability in symbols from literate societies, where the same animal, color, or gesture can acquire opposing meanings in neighboring regions. Prehistory gives us fewer anchors. Resemblance between two figures is important evidence of connection or shared choice. But resemblance is not a translation of belief. One hypothesis proposes that some Venuses were portraits of real women. If so, the lack of a face need not indicate poor observation. Paleolithic works such as the female head from Brassempouy prove that artists could make faces when they wished. Omitting facial identity may therefore have been deliberate, placing emphasis on body condition or social role rather than an individual likeness. Perhaps the figure represented not one person but the idea of a mother, an adult, or a stage in a woman's life. Bodily changes mark crucial moments in many communities: maturity, pregnancy, childbirth, nursing, and old age. Stone Age. People left no explanation, yet they certainly observed such transformations and knew that the community's future depended upon bodies able to create and sustain another generation. Those transformations included danger as well as continuity. Pregnancy and birth could bring pain, uncertainty, and death. Infancy was fragile. The work of feeding and protecting a child lasted long after birth. A figure connected with reproduction need not therefore have been a simple celebration of abundance. It might have held fear, experience, hope, memory, and instruction at once. Another interpretation suggests that women made images from their own view of themselves, looking down. A person sees breasts, belly, hips, and thighs more clearly than face, feet, or the proportions of the entire body. This viewpoint might explain the enlarged center and reduced extremities of some figures. The proposal is intriguing but cannot explain every example. Proportions vary, and there is no direct evidence that the carver was female or male. Its value lies in reminding us that these figures may arise from women's lived experience, rather than solely from another person's gaze. The objects may also have communicated knowledge without writing. A small portable figure could support stories and instruction. An adult might have used it when speaking of the body, maturity, pregnancy, or responsibilities assumed at a new stage of life. We should not invent the lesson. No evidence restores prehistoric speech. We can only observe that the figures are well suited to being held, passed between people, carried, and used in face-to-face encounters. They may also have served as protective objects. A person approaching childbirth might have carried one for reassurance. A family might keep a figure as a sign of continuity. Someone leaving on a long journey might take an image associated with home, kin, or community. But no common trace proves that all figures had this purpose. Some are worn, some intact, some broken, and many lost their original context before proper study. Context is decisive. A figure found in a living area may signify something different from one deposited in a pit or beside a special structure. Archaeologists therefore study material, tool marks, wear, find spot, and surrounding objects, not form alone. Unfortunately, many famous objects were discovered before excavation standards became as precise as they are today. Soil layers were poorly recorded, nearby items were separated, and subtle traces vanished. Later, science can analyze pigment or stone, but cannot always restore the moment of deposition. Every lost detail narrows the range of responsible interpretation. The red pigment once covering the Willendorf figure adds another layer of mystery. By firelight. The color may have made it warm and vivid. Red could evoke life, blood, earth, fire, or transformation. But it might simply have made the object more visible. At Dolní Věstonice, in the present-day Czech Republic, people modeled humans and animals in clay and fired them. These are among the oldest known ceramics, made long before the vessels of agricultural societies. This required intimate knowledge of fire. Clay that dried too quickly might crack. A sudden change of heat could break the figure. Oxygen and fuel altered the surface. The makers were not simply copying a body, they were guiding Earth through a physical transformation, from something soft and alterable to something hard enough to survive, whether or not that change possessed ritual meaning. It offered a powerful experience of material becoming other than it had been. Turning soft earth into a durable figure may have been technical experiment or meaningful transformation. Some pieces survived intact, many broke during firing. We cannot tell whether breakage was accidental or intended. The more closely we study the Venuses, the less they resemble evidence for one complete religion. They reveal no goddess's name, prayer, or prescribed use. What they show more clearly is that the human body had entered symbolic thought. Each maker chose what to emphasize and what to omit. An uncarved face, an enlarged abdomen, or marks upon head and torso may all have carried meaning. Though we no longer possess its language. Were the Venuses images of a mother goddess? Possibly, but it cannot be proved. Some may relate to fertility, pregnancy, or continuity. Others may have been amulets, ancestral figures, emblems of maturity, storytelling aids, or portraits of real people. There may never have been one explanation for objects made across so wide a country and so long a span of time. Science can establish age, material, and method. It cannot fully recover the beliefs that once surrounded these objects. Perhaps their silence is precisely what continues to attract us. A small figure survives for nearly 30,000 years, while its maker's name and every word once spoken about it disappear. In the final firelight, it rests in a palm, holding a story no one can now call by its proper name. What is certain is that Stone Age people did not regard the body as meaningless form. Within it lay life and age, strength and vulnerability, and the power to continue the community in time. The hands that held these figures also returned to Earth. Prehistoric people shaped images of life, but they also cared for bodies that no longer breathed. They covered the dead in color, placed valuable things beside them, and made graves, showing that death was never simply disappearance. In the next chapter, we shall approach those quiet places and ask whether death opened humanity's earliest door towards belief in sacred ancestors. About 31,000 years ago, on high ground near the Danube, a a small community prepared to end a day unlike any other. Cold wind crossed the pale loess, lifting dust around shelters and hearths, yet no one at the settlement's centre attended to cooking food or tools required for the next journey. Before them lay a small oval pit. Within it, two newborn bodies rested side by side in a curled position. Their small hands no longer moved, their eyes would never open upon the grassland and its passing herds. Red powder had been scattered around them, covering cold skin and drawing a vivid boundary between the children and the grey earth beneath. Those gathered at the grave did not send them away with nothing. Beside one body lay 53 small beads fashioned from mammoth ivory. Each had required patient cutting, polishing, and drilling, although the child had probably never been old enough to wear them in daily life. With the other were a pierced fox tooth and 3 small shells, selected and modified by human hands. Finally, a mammoth shoulder blade was laid above the grave like a shield. It protected the bodies from the weight of soil and preserved their resting place almost intact for tens of millennia. The burial was discovered at Kremswachtberg in present-day Austria. Ancient DNA shows that the infants were identical twins, the earliest genetically confirmed identical twins known. Archaeological evidence also suggests they were not buried at the same moment. The grave seems to have been reopened after the second child died. To reopen a grave is not a casual act. Its position had to be remembered, the covering recognized, and the earlier burial approached without destroying it. The mammoth bone may have made that return possible, whatever the mourners believed. Their actions joined 2 deaths into one carefully maintained place, giving material form to a relationship that had existed even before birth.
That detail deepens its silence. After burying one infant, the community may have returned, removed soil, and lifted the mammoth bone. They placed the second child beside the first, as though the bond between them still had to be maintained after both lives had ended.
We do not know who carried them to the grave, whether their mother stood nearby, or which words were spoken before the first earth fell. Archaeology can record only the body's position, the ochre, the ornaments, and evidence of deliberate care. Every detail nevertheless tells us that these children were not regarded as meaningless remains. Their lives were brief, yet they were members of the community. The effort bestowed on their grave suggests that human worth did not depend solely upon years lived, hunting ability, or food brought home about 1.5 meters away. Archaeologists found another infant, perhaps 3 months old. This child too was curled, dusted with red ochre, and accompanied by an ivory pin that may have fastened the hide or fur in which the body was wrapped. The deceased faced east, towards the light of dawn. We cannot know whether that orientation promised the sun's return. One grave cannot establish an Ice Age belief in rebirth, but the arrangement, wrapping, colouring, and direction of the body show that burial was more than removing the dead from a living place. It was an ordered series of acts. The community chose a location, dug the ground, prepared the body, brought ornaments, applied colour, and covered the grave. Every step required time, cooperation, and decisions accepted by others. Ordinary work paused. The living spent precious energy upon someone who could no longer answer, join a hunt, or defend the group against winter. That investment makes burial one of the clearest indications that death was understood as more than a practical difficulty. It also made grief public. Digging, preparing ornaments, arranging a body, and closing the earth are tasks others can witness and share. Emotion leaves no fossil, but coordinated action shows that loss was carried by more than one person. A burial gave sorrow a place, a sequence, and perhaps an ending that ordinary speech could not supply. Burial alone, however, does not prove belief in a soul or an afterlife. A body may be covered to keep scavengers away, protect water, or prevent odor, yet selected places, arranged bodies, and accompanying objects show that some burials exceeded basic hygiene. The dead person continued to possess an identity. Ornaments may have belonged to clothing worn in life. A bracelet, ivory bead, or animal tooth could express community, role, or the image by which relatives remembered someone when such things entered the grave. The living surrendered objects that had required substantial labor, sungir, on the Russian plain roughly 200 kilometers east of modern Moscow, offers some of the most striking evidence of this investment around 30,000 years ago. Several people there received exceptionally elaborate burials with ochre, ivory beads, animal teeth, bracelets, and other crafted objects. In one grave, 2 young people were laid head to head. Thousands of ivory beads surrounded their bodies, perhaps once sewn onto clothes, caps, and decorations. Long spears of straightened mammoth ivory and carved objects lay beside them. Each bead was small, but together they represented an immense reserve of labor. Ivory had to be divided, blank-shaped, holes drilled, surfaces finished, and the pieces sewn in patterns. The garments themselves have vanished, leaving only the beads' positions to suggest their splendor. What looks now like scattered white points once moved upon living bodies, sounding and catching light as their wearers walked. An adult at Sungir was buried separately beneath a wealth of ornaments. Yet other dead from the same place were treated very differently. Some received complete burials. Selected body parts were deliberately deposited. In other cases, certain remains appear not to have received comparable care. Bioarchaeological research therefore warns against imagining one uniform Sungir rite. Individuals were treated differently. While approximately 13,400 ivory beads in the most celebrated graves chiefly demonstrate an extraordinary tradition of decorating the body, the contrast raises a difficult question. Why did some people enter graves with thousands of beads while others did not? Perhaps they held a special position. The difference might relate to age, manner of death, family, physical condition, or a role performed in life. Even the word status must be used cautiously, because 2 of the richest graves belonged to very young people. They had not lived long enough to accumulate authority through hunting or leadership. Their identity may have derived from kin or lineage, or been assigned at birth, perhaps youth, bodily difference, or the circumstances of death prompted special care. No evidence allows us to choose confidently. What the graves do show is that hunter-gatherer societies were not simple bands concerned only with the next meal. They made objects demanding hundreds of hours of labor. Clothing and adornment expressed difference. After death, some part of that identity remained upon the body, as though the person still had to be recognized in the place once occupied among the living. Red ochre appears in many prehistoric graves, from the infants at Kremswachtberg to some of those at Sungir. Powder could be scattered on a body, over clothing, or around the pit, leaving color upon bone after thousands of years. Modern eyes readily connect red with blood and life. It may also evoke fire, earth, sunlight, or passage from one condition to another. Ochre had practical uses too, and its meaning probably varied between communities and periods. The pigment had first to be found, gathered, transported, and ground. Some deposits lay at a distance from habitation. Applying it to a corpse transformed not only color, but texture and scent, because ochre survives when skin, fiber, flowers, and food do not. It may dominate our picture of ceremonies that originally engaged many perishable materials. What is certain is that color changed the appearance of the dead. A pale, cold body covered in red no longer looked like someone who had only just stopped breathing. The living deliberately altered it, making the dead person the center of an exceptional act. Ritual may have helped the community face life's most bewildering transformation. Someone who had spoken, walked, and shared food now lay perfectly still. The body remained, but whatever had made the person themselves seemed absent. The distance between bodily presence and human absence may have created one of our oldest questions. Where had that person gone? Archaeology cannot recover the answer. Grave goods are sometimes taken as proof of an afterlife because the dead appear equipped with clothing, weapons, and jewelry. Yet these could equally be parting gifts, emblems of position, or material expressions of memory. A spear in a grave does not necessarily mean that its owner was expected to hunt in another world. It may signify the person they had been. Beads need not have been supplied for future use. Relatives may simply have refused to strip the clothes from the body. Burial speaks about the deceased, but also about how survivors wish to remember them. This distinction matters because remembrance itself is a belief-laden act. To represent someone through a spear, garment, or ornament is to say that identity persists in memory after bodily activity has ended. Such persistence is not yet proof of an immortal soul, but it creates the conceptual space in which ancestors and afterlives can later be imagined. Nor did every Stone Age person receive a grave that archaeology can find. Bodies might have been placed in the open, set into water, left in caves, covered with branches, or treated in ways leaving no durable trace. Ice, rivers, animals, and moving earth destroyed many burials. Those known today form only a minute portion of all prehistoric deaths. We cannot take a few exceptional graves as a universal right. Every community may have possessed its own farewell. Even at Sungir, treatment varied greatly. Death did not erase difference. Ceremony could make it more visible. Across millennia, relations between living and dead changed. As some communities remained longer beside food-rich rivers, the dead were not always sent far from habitation. At Lepenski Vir and Vlasak in the Danube gorges, graves were placed near, within, or beneath houses. Some infants at Lepenski Vir were buried below floors. Recent analysis rejects an older interpretation of these burials as child sacrifice. Researchers instead see respect, grief, and a wish for the house to continue sheltering lost children as it had sheltered them in life. Imagine a family lighting its fire above the place where a child lies beneath the ground. Each day they cross the same space to prepare food, make tools, and rest. The dead child has not been carried to an entirely foreign place. The body remains within the boundary of the home, under its roof and close to familiar sounds. At Lepenski Vir, the association of house and grave was not accidental. Types of burial correspond with particular places in the settlement, and some locations continued to be used for centuries. When a house rose where earlier members had been buried, the ground became more than a convenient place to live. It carried memory. Those walking above knew that beneath them lay people who had hunted, born children, told stories, and kindled fires before their time. Repeated building could renew that link. Floors were repaired, hearths relit, and walls replaced. Yet the burial remained as a fixed point. A child born generations later might never have known the person below, but could learn who lay there and why the place mattered. Through such teaching, private mourning could become collective history.
Had the dead become sacred ancestors? Again, certainty is impossible.
Not every deceased person becomes an ancestor, and a burial near a house does not prove ancestor worship. Yet when the dead remain inside domestic space, when their location is remembered over generations, and when houses are built around old graves, they may continue to shape the community's understanding of itself.
An ancestor need not be a god.
An ancestor may embody origin, affirm that a family belongs to this land, or appear whenever the community recounts its past. Their presence may survive not through any prayer we can recover, but through the decision not to remove them entirely from the living world. Perhaps this is burial's most profound transformation. A person can die without the relationship ending. Survivors remember a name, preserve possessions, return to a grave, and tell later children about someone they never met. Through memory, The dead continue to influence ideas of family, territory, and time. Night settles over the Danube settlement. Fires glow in houses, while beneath their floors lie bodies that have rested through many seasons. The living move above them, carrying stories the dead can no longer tell. From small graves bright with ochre, people began to bind present life to generations gone before. As memory became attached to house, river, and land, the sacred world moved beyond portable objects and isolated pits. In our final chapter, that memory enters the wider landscape, where communities raise monuments of stone and turn them towards the eternal movement of the sky. After tens of thousands of years spent moving with herds and seasons, some European communities began to remain longer upon the same ground. They sowed seed, tended animals, repaired houses, and returned year after year to familiar fields. The change was not sudden. Hunting, gathering, herding, and cultivation coexisted in many societies. Yet, as people stayed, their relationship with land deepened. A valley was no longer a temporary halt. It became the place where children were born, elders died, and generations of memory accumulated. The dead, too, no longer lay only in individual graves. In many regions they entered large structures of earth and stone, strong enough to outlast a human life. Building them demanded communal effort, choosing ground, cutting soil, hauling stone, and setting heavy materials into place. This was an important transition. Earlier, sacred things could fit in a hand. An ivory figure, beads, or engraved bone could travel with a person. Now memory and ceremony became embedded in the landscape itself. Stone tombs could not easily be carried away. They remained upon the land as signs that a community had lived there, buried its dead, and understood itself to belong.
Imagine a cloudy morning in Neolithic Europe on a hillside. Scores of people pull a great stone with ropes and timber rollers. Wet soil makes every step heavy. Some hold the lines, others place logs before the load. Another group corrects its course.
The work lasts days, perhaps longer. No one completes it alone. Ropes wear, rollers sink, and the route must be cleared. Food is required for everyone involved, while other members continue the work of fields and animals. Before a monument can rise, a community must organize time as carefully as stone. The completed structure therefore records social agreement as surely as engineering skill. The living are building for the dead, but the monument belongs to them as well. It gathers people, requires cooperation, and creates a shared memory visible to later generations. When the last stone is placed, the tomb does more than shelter remains. It makes death part of the countryside. Passers-by know that ancestors, relatives, or former members lie within. Stories may change and names be forgotten, but the structure still declares that others lived here before them. Across Western Europe, passage graves were built with narrow corridors leading to central chambers. Bodies, or selected bones, entered over several episodes. Such tombs were not always closed forever after one funeral. Inside, the experience differed sharply from the open landscape. A narrow passage forced bodies to bend or move in single file. The chamber gathered darkness, cold, and the presence of remains accumulated over time. Entry may have been limited to particular people or occasions. Though we cannot know the rules, architecture directed movement and attention long before any words of a rite were spoken. The living returned. They might bring new remains, rearrange old ones, or perform actions archaeology cannot reconstruct. The monument became more than one person's final place. It joined generations of the dead to a community outside. One of the most celebrated examples is Newgrange, in Ireland's Brú na Bóinne complex. From a distance, Newgrange resembles a great grass-covered mound surrounded by stones. Behind its stone facade, a narrow passage leads far into a chamber beneath the mound. It was constructed more than 5,000 years ago, before Egypt's Great Pyramids and before Stonehenge acquired its most famous stones. Its wonder lies not only in scale or labor, but in an orientation joining it to the sky. Around the winter solstice, as the year's longest nights reach their end, the rising sun enters an opening above the doorway. Light travels along the dark passage and touches the central chamber. Imagine waiting inside Newgrange on a winter morning. The darkness is almost absolute. Cold stone closes around you. The distant entrance is a pale suggestion. After long minutes, a narrow line of light appears.
At first it touches only the floor.
Then it advances, carrying the thin gold of dawn. A chamber, dark for most of the year, becomes visible for a brief interval, as though the sun has found a road into the dwelling of the dead. We do not know what the builders called that moment, or whether they imagined the sun as a human-shaped deity, but the careful alignment shows that winter light was not accidental. They observed the sky over years. They knew that sunrise shifted along the horizon with the seasons, and that after days had grown shorter, light reached an extreme and began to return. Such knowledge could not come from one observation. It required comparison across seasons and the preservation of what earlier observers had learned. A horizon point, a standing marker, or an oral instruction could help one generation confirm the pattern noticed by another. Newgrange turned that accumulated attention into architecture. Stone held a relationship between earth and sky, steady through time. For farming societies, that return mattered deeply. Winter could exhaust stores and increase illness. The sun's turning announced that the cycle had not ended.
Light would grow.
The earth would warm.
Life would continue.
When sunlight entered a chamber of human remains, the dead and the heavens shared one space. Perhaps the community saw a promise of return. Perhaps it marked an important date. Ancestors, harvest, and sun may have belonged to a ritual whose full pattern eludes us. From Ireland, we travel to Salisbury Plain in southern England, where the great stones of Stonehenge still stand in the wind. Stonehenge was not built at once. Its landscape changed for centuries through earthworks, pits, timber posts, and finally the large stones now familiar to the world. Nor were those stones alone.
Around them extended burial mounds, avenues, settlements, and other monuments. Stonehenge was more than an astronomical instrument. It belonged to a complex centre where living people, the dead, and communities from afar could meet.
At nearby Durrington Walls, animal bones and traces of communal feasting reveal large gatherings. People arrived from different regions to eat together and participate in major events. Feasting was itself a means of creating community. Animals had to be raised or hunted, brought to the site, butchered, cooked, and distributed. Visitors renewed alliances, exchanged news, arranged relationships, and took home memories of the gathering. Monument, meal, and movement across the landscape may all have belonged to the same season of social and ceremonial life. Picture such an assembly during a winter more than 4,000 years ago. Groups appear along earthen tracks carrying food, tools, and stories from home. Smoke hangs over the settlement. Human voices mingle with dogs and animals in the cold air.
Far away, the stones remain still.
As the important hour approaches, people may move along established routes towards the circle. The sun hangs low, shining through gaps between stones and forming an axis of light visible from within. Stonehenge relates to both summer and winter solstices, though evidence across the surrounding landscape makes some researchers especially attentive to winter as a season of gathering, feasting, and remembering the dead. No single purpose can explain Stonehenge. Its meaning also changed as the place changed. A site beginning with earthworks and cremation burials did not remain identical after timber and stone transformed its form. Later communities inherited choices made by predecessors and added their own. To ask for Stonehenge's one true function may therefore be to ask the wrong question of a monument with a long biography. It may simultaneously have been burial place, meeting ground, community symbol, and monument to celestial cycles. In its earlier phases, cremated remains of many individuals were deposited there, making death an important part of its history. Those buried included men, women, and different ages. So the monument was not simply the tomb of one king. They may have come from important families or represented communities engaged in building and using the landscape. Their names are lost. But their remains show that Stonehenge looked not only upwards, it looked backwards as well. Among the stones, people could experience both the sun's movement and the memory of those who had gone. The sky became a great clock, marking seasons, gatherings, and important stages of communal life. Was the sun a god? Neither Stonehenge nor Newgrange offers a written answer. No divine name is cut into the stones, and no complete myth survives from their builders. Yet the sun had clearly entered sacred order. That order was practical and symbolic at once. Solar movement helped organize seasons of planting, gathering, travel, and labor at the same time. Its reliability offered an image of continuity beyond any human lifespan. When a monument made the solstice visible, observation became a communal event, and time could be experienced through a place built by ancestors. It appeared at the proper time. Crossed, carefully calculated direction, and connected monuments on earth with movement in heaven. Ancient people could not command it, but they could watch, remember, and build according to its path. Perhaps that is how they made order within a changing world. Winter would pass.
Light would return.
The living would become the dead, but the community would continue upon the ancestors' land. Our journey has passed from the lion man in a deep cave to animals upon walls, Venuses held in a palm, graves, and immense circles of stone. Each offers a different form of belief. There is no evidence that Stone Age Europeans shared one pantheon. Every community, period, and landscape may have possessed its own stories. Together, however, their traces show human beings seeking meaning in animals, the body, death, ancestors, land, and sky. The first gods may have had no names. They may not have sat on thrones, carried thunderbolts, or ruled celestial kingdoms. They may have been present in a lion's power, a life-bearing body, the memory of the dead, or a ray returning after the longest winter night. Now dawn rises over Stonehenge. The stones stand in the wind as they have through thousands of winters. Light passes between them, touches the earth, and continues across the sky. Their builders are gone. Their names have vanished. Their voices are silent. Their gods remain beyond our understanding. Yet whenever the sun returns along its ancient path, the landscape reminds us that Stone Age people did not merely exist within nature. They watched it, remembered it, made it symbolic, and set their lives within cycles greater than themselves. The cave fire has dwindled. Animals on the walls return to darkness. Graves lie silent beneath red ochre, and great stones stand upon the open plain, waiting for the winter sun to come back after the longest night. We still do not know the names of the Stone Age gods. Perhaps they never resembled kings enthroned in heaven. Perhaps they were present in a lion moving through darkness, a river sustaining its people, a mother bringing forth a new generation, a lost relative resting beneath the house, or a ray of light entering a narrow passage of stone. The answers have vanished. But the surviving traces show that prehistoric people did more than hunt and endure. They imagined and remembered. They feared and hoped. They sought meaning in what could not be seen. Perhaps this was where humanity's mythic world began. Thank you for joining tonight's journey. If the story has helped you to relax, please subscribe to the channel and follow our page so that you do not miss the next passage into the past. Leave a comment and tell me which story you would like to hear next. The mysterious rites of the Neanderthals, secrets hidden in prehistoric caves, or the origins of Europe's ancient gods. May your night be peaceful